where you are. Hi. I see teachers are responding in the chat box. So a very big, good welcome. So hello, I am Super Huang from Macmillan Education, the teacher trainer and academic consultant based in Shanghai. So I'm very glad to be here and hope you're all doing well. Yeah, good afternoon from Thailand. Hello. Thank you very much for joining the third episode of our new chat show, ELTea Time with Macmillan Education. So a very big welcome, a lot of teachers from Thailand and someone from Vietnam. Great. So how is it? How is it going? Hello from Indonesia. So today in Shanghai, it's a very sunny day, hot, sunny summer day. How about the weather in your place? Yeah, let me know in the chat box. Good day here in Bangkok. And we also have 안녕하세요. Are we having teachers from Korea as well? Same here. Okay, nice. So today I am here joined by two of our brilliant trainers from Macmillan Education. So let's welcome Dale and John to turn on their camera and to see us together. And today we're going to explore the world of inclusivity together with John. Hi, John. Hi, how are you? Can you please introduce yourself?
I'm John, and I work with you here in Shanghai, actually. So I'm the Regional Professional Development Manager, working with teachers like yourselves all across Asia, predominantly face-to-face over the last 6-7 years, but obviously more online presence at the moment. So welcome to all of you. Lots of familiar names there in the participant list as well, which is great to see. I think Del had a few little internet connection issues, so he'll join us as soon as possible. But you kick off, Super, and then I'm sure he'll join us very soon.
Sure. So we're going to talk about the topic of inclusivity today in education. So inclusivity defined as the quality of trying to include many different types of people and treating them all fairly and equally. And it's a very big topic, a very new topic as well, maybe. We don't talk about that as much as other topics in ELT field. So we're going to explore inclusivity's place in virtual or face-to-face classrooms with a particular focus on differentiation today. So teachers, grab a cup of tea and join us to find out more about what differentiation means for your teaching practice. So we will guide you through a discussion on the challenges and practical solutions to help you create a more inclusive environment for your students. So by the way, Del, you're here. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thank you. Just a couple of glitches in the matrix, I think. I don't know what happened. It's saying my internet was not so good, but I'll keep an eye on it. If I do go, I'm sure John and yourself can keep us entertained and informed.
Okay.
We'll do our best. What are you drinking, Del, by the way?
Oh, sorry, yeah. I've got a nice cup of mint tea. And this is from a place that you know very well, from Sri Lanka.
Wow.
So nice,
what a country.
And what about John?
I'm on my usual hot water. I'm going through a bit of a hot water craze at the moment. I think I'm learning a lot from my Chinese colleagues. Very, very good for the health, apparently.
Sounds lovely.
I just want to say it's very Chinese, hot water. So I have a lychee flavored black tea today. So sounds good, right?
We are very differentiated, aren't we, in terms of our tea? Yeah.
Yes.
How about you guys in the chat? Have you got a cup of tea? What are you drinking today?
And many teachers from Shanghai and from Thailand. Yes. So yeah, I just put up the agenda for today. So can you guys see the agenda? Well, yes. Okay, great. So with the cup of tea we're going to talk about the differentiation in the following agenda. So are you guys ready? Ready to go?
I'm good.
Always. Born ready.
Okay, good. So we will be starting with what and why. So what is differentiation and why is it so important? So shall we start from John, maybe?
Wow, thank you very much. So yeah, when I think of differentiation, I think more about the individual student and the individual student need in a classroom. So for me, it's like, yeah, sort of changing or kind of adapting or tweaking your teaching or your instruction more to meet the individual need, not the whole kind of class, not teaching to the whole class, but sort of tailoring for the individual need. Anything, would you agree, Del, or anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I kind of looked at it in a similar way. So yeah, it defines what, and again, I use that word that you've just used, individual students, what they already know, so what they have a prior knowledge of, and then what their gaps are. So the teacher would understand this and then know what they still need to learn. So that for me is kind of differentiation. But I think if to sort of sum it up in a nutshell, it encourages teachers to educate the child to their fullest potential. So again, focusing on the child rather than the class, focusing on the individual. And then within that, I did some research at 3 sort of key areas for students and teachers to sort of blend together with differentiation.
That sounds good. Can I ask you a quick question, actually? How did you research for this ELT time? What was your process? Because this will help with the definition as well a bit later, I think. Yeah. What
Well,
did you go through?
Well, we had the agenda already, so I looked at the agenda. I did a kind of a bit of a brainstorm to start with, and tried to think about where I would come from. So I came from looking at it from a student point of view, and then from a teacher point of view. And then I look back at some research that differentiation is not new, of course. Looked at research that I'd done in the past. I shared some material actually with you both, maybe about a year ago now, which was really great. But that was more differentiation with learning apps. But within that was some really good background material. So I leaned heavily on that as well to help and support my thoughts of what I think as well.
Yeah, that's cool. So actually, when Super set us the task, so we have these kind of 5 or 6 areas that we're going to go through. Actually, probably both of us, Del, achieved getting to that task in different ways. So it was open, right? So I looked at more videos, video recordings, old webinars from the internet and things like that to get to the final goal. Whereas you maybe did some brainstorming, maybe that's more suitable for you. So it's kind of giving options, isn't it, to individuals? You still have the same objective or goal, but how you kind of get there are kind of options and a little bit of choice. And I think that helps define a little bit, but also the importance as well of individual pathways and own choice in your own time, at your own pace, right?
So I think I kind of, I guess I would compare what you've just said to sort of project-based learning, which I think is a really great way of differentiate, or of allowing for differentiation in the class. And that, and one of the sort of definitions of differentiation is allowing learners to show what they know using a variety of delivery methods. Now, our delivery method is through this ELTea chat today, but how we got to that, like you said, is different. So I think it does fit it well into what we're doing.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, great to hear like the definitions from you too, because we always think about the individuals in our classroom and think about how we can better manage them in a balanced way. So maybe let's move on to the second topic that is about. So I've prepared something for you. So that is about how. So we're going to invite you to talk about how to approach differentiation. Yeah, you might have mentioned some of the ways and practices you did, but yeah, maybe in more details. Yeah, shall we start from Dell this time?
So this is how to approach, right?
Yes,
So
how to approach.
yeah, I did. I'm sorry, I was just typing something in the chat. I was listening, but I just checking instructions. So as I said, I kind of looked at this in quite a lot of detail, and there's a really good document out there, and I'm going to share some links with you at the end as well. But there's sort of 3 different areas that teachers can approach differentiation. So we've got product differentiation, and process differentiation, and content differentiation. So product differentiation would sort of be allowing, what John was sort of saying, allowing learners opportunities to show their understanding in different ways that would suit them. So as I mentioned, project-based learning is great for this, because you give the students a question. This drives inquiry, builds higher order thinking skills. They have to go away, research, do lots to answer this one question. But how they then deliver the product, how they deliver their understanding could be in many different ways. It could be a video, it could be a presentation, it could be a poster, or even a podcast. So if we think of this in terms of being differentiating how to show understanding through a different product, I think if we do this within a text. So for example, if you had a text where you have students answering comprehension questions, we could also maybe think about different ways that we could get students to show understanding, either summarizing or doing something else that isn't just answering questions in the book. Do you want to continue, John, and then I can go back to the other 2 in a moment. I just don't want people to get bored of my voice.
No, yeah, I agree with those three areas. It's 3 areas that I found as well, and I think in terms of the how, also, the first thing I would probably do would be to focus on the individuals in the classroom and try and get enough data about them in terms of their. I think there are 3 areas. Their kind of interest, you can do through sort of surveys and things like that, questionnaires. Their learning profiles, which comes more into their kind of their ability and leads into mixed abilities, their proficiency, their background in language learning, whether they like working independently or in groups, but also their readiness as well, what they maybe know, their prior knowledge, their level of knowledge, what they know about, for example, the topic of a unit, and find out as much as you can about that before you start maybe sort of designing your lessons. And as you said, Del, you can change up the content as long as you have the goal doesn't change, but you can sort of input the content, for example, in different ways. So like a grammar lesson, you can maybe show like a grammar video. You could record your own grammar video. They could read a dialogue that contained the grammar. You could present it digitally, the grammar, or in a print book. You could use an inductive or a deductive approach, sort of different ways depending on their readiness, their interest, and what they're into, really.
Yeah, I think what you've done there, I think maybe I don't know what research you did, of course. We're not in the same office. I'm in Bangkok. But I think you might have read a similar work, because what you just mentioned about getting to know the learner's interests, the strengths, the weaknesses, how they like to learn. Yeah, I've got exactly the same thing. And if we define that in the research that I read, was called process differentiation. And then you went on to mention the content as well, which is the content differentiation. And for me, I think that's probably fairly easy in some ways to do that. Like you say, using different approaches, but also a different input. So if you've got a reading text, it's easy to turn it into a listening, for example, and vice versa. And most course books now do have obviously they've always had tape scripts, but often now you'll see readings have the listenings or have someone has recorded them as a listening as well. I think also varying the achievability of a task is something that we can do. So, for example, if it is comprehension or if there are questions involved, you might have learners who are very strong answering, or learners who are not so strong would answer maybe less questions than someone who is of a different ability. And then for the stronger students, they answer all the questions, but then have an extra task to do as well. Okay. So that content differentiation.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are lots of there's lots of things coming in the chat about large classes, and maybe it's important to just mention that you're not creating a lesson plan for every individual student, right? You're just giving opportunities to vary how you deliver the content, maybe the process, the types of grouping, the different types of learning activities. You're just varying them slightly to help kind of different student and student profiles. And you don't have to do it for every activity or every page of every lesson of every unit, right? Exactly. And maybe we can give a few tips. Go on.
Yeah, I think I agree with you completely. And I think the key here for me is your needs analysis. So we've talked about meeting students' needs, but if we don't know what those needs are, we can't do that. So even if you have a large class, at the start of the term, you really need to be focusing a lot of time on finding out who your students are and what they like and what their interests are, and all this data that then you can then use to tailor your classes, and then even tailor it further down to individual needs as you get to know them even better.
Yes, I think I totally agree with your opinions. We're not designing an individual lesson plan for an individual student, but to differentiate in the product, in the process, and in the content. So as a representative of the teachers, I'm going to ask you a very practical question, because, you know, the case is teachers usually only have one course book for the whole class. So they are not able to like change a different course book. So here comes the question: how to adapt the course book materials for differentiation. Yes, John, please.
Okay. Actually, I think adapt is the wrong word there, actually. Having thought about it, I don't think you necessarily need to adapt the course book itself. I think you just need to have a good course book that offers you a lot of choice for the things that we've talked about. So different ways to show off or the product, the end product of a unit, for example. So whether through projects, portfolios. Some courses have something called progress trackers, right? Which is almost like a game at the end of a unit. Self-assessments, maybe online practice to show off at the end of a unit. So I think kind of if you've got a course book that offers you all these kind of different variety of kind of products for showing off your learning, that's a good start. And it's all there contained for different types of student. What about you, Dale? Do you feel that you need to adapt for the course book for differentiation, or what are you thinking?
Again, I think we're very lucky in this day and age that people have this in mind when they're developing course books. So my advice would be straight away is to look in your teacher's guide, look for that word differentiation, and see how it's going to help you. Because if it is a fairly new course book, then there will be help and support for teachers within that. I'll give some examples. So Global Stage, for example, which is a primary course book, has differentiated writing support, where they have a support template and a challenge template. And students, you can even ask students to choose which template they want, depending on how they feel that day. So, and again, I think the activity where if you have a reading or a listening and you vary the number of questions that students have to answer, could be a way to adapt things as well. Quite a simple way that doesn't take any preparation. And again, encourage your students to take responsibility for themselves and what they want to choose. And that will give them a growth, well, hopefully build a growth mindset, and help them to sort of take responsibility for their learning.
Definitely. I think for higher levels and maybe kind of teens and young adults as well, giving them that choice of activity. So for example, again, you've got your same end goal or outcome or objective for everyone, but giving them like a choice of, 5 or 6 different activities, and they've got to choose maybe 3 out of 5 activities to do to get to that end goal, to show off that learning. I think that's probably a little bit more advanced and will come a little bit later.
Going back to the resources as well. I mean, I've worked with a large number of teachers throughout my career, both managing them and working side by side. And you'd be surprised at how many people actually do pick up the teacher's book to give them help and support. I think people, the part of the joy for me of teaching was planning lessons and doing different activities. And to be honest, I didn't really pick up the teacher's book that much because I was confident in my own abilities. But there is so much brilliant information in teachers' books. Now I work more closely with them. So I do recommend you pick up that teacher's book and have a look through.
Definitely. I think the final point on kind of adapting materials, and a lot of people have been talking about assessment and how do we kind of assess and things like that. So I think little self-assessments at the start, little self-assessments at the end to gauge, little entry tickets at the start of the class, whether you're online or face-to-face, just to kind of find out and check in with the students. And I think we'll transition in a minute, won't we, to online sort of teaching. But even more important is constant check-in. How are you doing? Little entry tickets, little quizzes, informal, more formal. Just find out how they're doing, and then you can adapt, basically, depending. And you find sorry, go on. I'm just going to say, if you find out that 70% of the students have got it really quickly, great. Then you can set up maybe sort of groups with them. And they can move them on. Those who are still struggling a bit, you could set up groups with them and then support them a little bit more and kind of adapt a little bit more. We say off the what am I trying to say? Off the cuff? Is that a phrase? Have I made that up?
That is a phrase. No, you've done fine. Your English is good.
Be more responsive. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you find when you were doing the research, John? Sorry, Super. Did you find that there's a lot of crossover here with assessment for learning in terms of like being able to understand your learners' needs, where they are, where they need to get to, is all about assessment for learning. And there is tons of, and we've been doing quite a bit of work on assessment for learning recently, and I can really see lots of crossover, but I am still struggling to really nail down how I can put the two together. So that's maybe something I need to do in the next month or two to really understand how the two do fit perfectly.
Yeah, maybe we can mention a little bit more when I think Super's going to ask us a little bit about online teaching and not having students left behind. I think I was going to mention a little bit about that then, actually.
Oh, great. Okay, well, there you go. That's interesting to know.
So let's just move on quickly to the next question about how to bridge the gap with online teaching. Yeah, many teachers in Asia are still teaching online, and that makes differentiation even more challenging. So could you please share some of your ideas about how to bridge that gap? Maybe starting from Dell.
Okay, just a quick one. Entry tickets. John, do you just want to define what an entry ticket is? Just because there's a couple of questions in there.
Yeah.
So an entry ticket is a little task that you can give at the start of the class as they're coming in. which is almost like a little sort of pre-assessment, maybe of their knowledge of the topic of the unit, of the vocab of a unit. So you might have a simple kind of match the pictures to the words and just sort of see what they already know about maybe the topic vocab for the vocabulary lesson. If you find they know it already, or like I said, 80% know it, then you can maybe channel them through some extra little practice activity while you kind of work with the other ones, or while you maybe give a little kind of little task for the other ones to support them. Yeah.
Cheers. Thank you. I think it's just a little bit confusion. Well, not confusion, but needed clarifying. So, bridging the gap with online learning to make sure that no learner is left behind. So I think for me, I see online learning as being very similar to face-to-face learning in this respect. I just think this all starts with the planning stage of your lesson. So when you're planning it, well, first of all, you've done your needs analysis. So you know who your learners are, you know the strong, you know the weak ones, you know their interests, you know how they like to learn, and you're giving them options to show their understanding. But when you're thinking about your planning stage, if you think about your weakest student first and make sure that your aims and how you check that you've achieved your aims are based on that individual student who is your weakest. Now, this doesn't mean that you're bringing everybody down to the standard of the weakest student in the class. It just means that when you've achieved your aims of that weakest student, then you can be sure that student A has got it, and then B, C, and D have already got it. And then you can think about how you can stretch and challenge those stronger students. So for me, it's all about, focusing on those weaker students. Also, when you're online, you do need to consider the other factors. So the environmental factors of learning. So do they have their own computer, laptop, or tablet? You know, is their internet good? Is the environment that they're studying conducive to learning, or do they share a room with 4 other children? So you need to maybe think about tailoring your needs analysis to include that information as well. So there's a lot of data that you need to look at, but if you have that data, make you more effective. John?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that, because different students have different internet connection, different technology, and I think by default that will make us as teachers maybe vary the types of activity, because we know that some students aren't going to have a camera or microphone or something like that. So we might have to, for example, send them videos in advance to watch us introducing the grammar or something like that. So I think by default that actually might help us. Picking up on what you said, Del, this is a nice one where you kind of stick or write the names of your students around the plate, and then every class you kind of move the dial around one student, and then you focus on your lesson plan. You focus in on that student, their learning profile, their interests, and you build the lesson for them. And then the next class, the next one, it kind of helps you think more about that kind of individual, I think. But I think, like you said, I mean, nothing has to change drastically. Don't panic. There's so many things that you can bring across from face-to-face teaching and tailor a little bit. And in terms of the varied activities and something like the go on.
Yeah, I mean, just moving to online. Often we're obviously face-to-face, but there's certainly a lot more asynchronous learning that goes on now as well. I think students are expected to do other things in their own time, and actually this allows for better differentiation by giving them opportunities to, like you said, to flip the classroom and to do the learning in their own time. You just have to be careful that there's not too much of that, that's all.
Yeah. There's a question about, with online learning, about breakout rooms and grouping, and can differentiated grouping be effective when you're using breakout rooms? Which is a very good question. If you're using something like Zoom, what I would suggest is to do the grouping manually. So thinking about your students and your lesson plan, who you're going to put it together, and then kind of manually group them. Obviously, if you've got a large class, that would take a little bit more time, but it would be more effective depending on the task that you use.
And on that, remember, you don't have to group by strengths and weaknesses. it's up to you. I mean, you can also group by interests as well if the lesson's more topic based. But you need that data. I keep going back to the data. You need it.
Yes.
Yes, and I think I agree with Dell about the asynchronous time for students to do some tasks on their own instead of putting students in one classroom and doing all the same thing together. That is maybe one of the benefits of having online classes. Sometimes, there are challenging times, but there are opportunities for differentiation as well. So, Dell, John, would you like to add more about online teaching of differentiation?
No, I was just going to say we've got some other brilliant webinars that we've done. I think we'll share links to that in the chat box or after. And on that topic about making sure no one is left behind, I think that was Joanne Ramsden? I think one of our primary authors. So yeah, check out that webinar. And she talks a lot about cooperative learning, self-directed learning, self-assessments, all these kind of things which will make differentiation much kind of easier or more effective in the online environment.
Yes. So the final,
I would say, just to add to that, there's loads of information out there. So just go and have a look. Do the questions that we asked you today. Why don't you go and answer them for yourself as well and find out those answers? But I would, start where you can. It's not easy to do this. And even some people would actually say it's impossible to meet the needs of every learner in every class. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to. And I also think that when students see that you're trying to do this, it has a positive effect on everybody, and hopefully will increase motivation as well. But stick at it, find one technique, use it, and then add something to it and keep adding to it.
Mm-hmm. So some maybe final tips for differentiation before we end the session today.
Sure. I'm just looking at that question from Angelina. It's a great question about online teaching differentiation, making it authentic. I think the learning becomes authentic when you have authentic, like Dell was talking about, the product, the end product. So the more that you can create maybe choices or variety of end products. So, for example, you could do e-portfolios, you could use presentations, they could record themselves. All these kind of nice ways which help them produce the language in kind of authentic ways would be one way to look at that. And loads of stuff online now about e-portfolios and different ways of evidence of learning and showing off learning. Yeah,
I think project-based learning, project-based learning is a key area. Is authenticity is part of the framework. And I think authenticity comes a lot from the audience as well. So when your students are doing something, ask yourself why they are doing it. What's the reason for them to do that task? And the authenticity will come from that. If it's just to check their understanding, fine. But if it's producing something, give them an audience, give them something to challenge themselves with, and authenticity will come from that.
And on that note, someone says motivation is the key with this. And I think the motivation will come from one element of differentiation, which is that choice. So giving them a choice of activities to do in their breakout room. So together, here are 3 choices of activity. You can write something, you can discuss it, or maybe you can draw it. You choose, and you've got 5 minutes to do this task together. Off you go. So giving that choice can be really motivating. Yeah.
That's great, particularly with older learners, with teenagers and with adults as well. That's a great idea, actually.
Cool.
So I think we have just over 2 minutes now. So thank you very much for John and Dell to share their opinions about differentiation under inclusivity. Yeah, it is a very good topic for us to think about as a teacher and as a trainer as well. So we have a lot of information discussed today, but there are still more to explore by teachers yourselves. So hopefully you have heard something useful and heard something inspiring from John and Del, and we look forward to see you next time for our ELT time. Yes. So yeah, final words before we end from Del and John.
He's been John.
She's been super.
And he's been Del.
Thanks for stopping by, Asia.
Stay classy, Asia.
And have a super day. So bye-bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.
See you.